crucial if Ukraine's economy is to survive, and that is fuel. Right now, gas station after gas station is empty. The ones that have fuel limit purchases to about 2.5 gallons a visit, and the lines we saw last week were hours long just for that much. Now, many of the trucks we saw waiting at the border, you see here, will refuel in Poland. And it was all trucks at the border waiting hours and days, because when we got there this time, there were virtually no cars. Everyone who has wanted to leave Ukraine, who can leave Ukraine, has gone. Thanks for joining us. AC360 starts now.
Good evening ring especially hollow tonight. A little boy who just turned 3 this weekend is now 2 days into a lifetime without his dad. His father, Andre McNeil, was shot and killed at a supermarket Saturday picking up a surprise birthday cake for his son. He was murdered for the color of his skin on his son's 3rd birthday. 10 people were killed Saturday at Tops Friendly Market in a racially motivated attack, allegedly by an 18-year-old white man who is now in custody, charged with first-degree murder. It wasn't even the only mass shooting this weekend. We've learned a lot about the alleged killer already, his background, prior red flags, the racist poison he apparently drew on, and how widespread it sadly is. And we'll talk about all of it tonight, but we're not going to use his name or show his photo. He live streamed the killings. He wants fame. We don't want to be part of giving him that. Instead, we begin tonight by telling you what we know about those whose lives were stolen on a Saturday, like Andre McNeil. By the way, he went everywhere, we're told, with his son. His fiancée says their little boy would follow his dad like a shadow. Saturday, on her Facebook page, she said, "Today my baby was born, but today my soulmate was taken. How do I tell my son his daddy's not coming home? How do I, as a mother, make it okay? Someone, please tell me, because I really don't know." Andre McNeil was 53. Catherine Massey was 72. She was known as Cat. She was a community activist, a letter writer who cared a lot about her community and advocated for them and for her city. A year ago, she wrote a letter to the editor of the Buffalo News urging federal action to prevent shooting deaths. She is now dead. Margus Morrison was a school bus aide. His stepdaughter says he loved kids and they loved him back. He was a hero to his family, and he went out of his way to provide for his disabled mother. Margus Morrison died buying snacks for movie night with them. Aaron Salter Jr., 55 years old, was a retired Buffalo police lieutenant who was working as a store security guard. He died protecting shoppers, exchanging gunfire with the killer who was wearing body armor. Geraldine Talley's niece describes her aunt as the life of the party, an avid baker and the one who would always put their family reunions together. Geraldine Talley was 62. Ruth Whitfield was 86 and the mother of a former Buffalo fire commissioner, loved deeply by her family. Pearl Young was 77 and still serving as a substitute teacher in the Buffalo public school system. She cared about kids that much. Her family describes her as a true pillar of the community. Celestine Cheney was a grandmother of 6. She survived breast cancer several years ago and brain aneurysms before that. A fighter, says her grandson, who tells us there was never a dull moment with her. She was always laughing, he said, spreading joy and love. Roberta Drury was only 32. Her brother says she dedicated much of her time to helping him with his leukemia treatment and helping her family at the local restaurant they own. He says she was a happy person who always tried to do the right thing. And 67-year-old Hayward Patterson was a taxi driver, a deacon at his church. His nephew says he took pride in helping people, someone who would give someone a free ride if they needed one, someone with a big heart. Mr. Patterson was shot and killed helping a passenger outside the supermarket. Joining us now, his close friend and a fellow church deacon, Lenny Lane. Deacon Lane, I appreciate you being with us. I'm so sorry for your loss, and I'm sorry that we're talking under these circumstances. What do you want people to know about Deacon Hayward Patterson?
Deacon Hayward Patterson was a giver. He was a lover of people. He loved his community. He loved his church, and he loved his family. And he was one of the ones who would go out of his way to make sure you was all right. He would go out of his way to make sure you was comfortable. He would go out of the way to make sure that maybe you had a little bit more than he did. I mean, he was very diligent. He was very attentive at the church, cleaning, mopping, mopping, sweeping, vacuuming, very attentive to our pastor, Pastor Russell C. Bell, and First Lady Bell. He was one of the ones you would love to have around, around you. He loved to sing, and one of the songs he always was one of the songs, he loved the old song, Trouble in My Way. You know what I mean? And that's one of the songs when, you think about it and how he sung it with passion. He sung it with, you know what I mean? When you know that trouble's in the way, sometimes you have to, you have to cry sometimes, you know what I mean? You have to let God know, you know what I mean, that you are feeling the pain, but at the same time, he knows that God is yet still in control. But at the same time, Deacon Hayward Patterson, who's one that, was a class act.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Every time you see him, he was dressed very well. And when he did it, he made sure that he honored those people that he loved the most. And that was his family, and those were the ones that he carried around.
I understand.
Doing transportation in front of the top chest.
Well, yeah, I understand when the shooting happened, he was actually loading groceries into his car for someone he had driven to the market when it happened. So he was helping them get the groceries into the car. He regularly volunteered to drive people to and from Tops Market to pick up groceries for years. Is that right?
Absolutely, and that's what he did. He loved, doing that. He loved taking care of people, to the supermarket and from the supermarket. Now, he would wait for them. He would sit in the car patiently, and he was the one that, did make a difference how far he had to go, close or far. He wanted to make sure that they got home with their groceries because, being the only supermarket within the area, sometimes some of these families travels, 3 and 4 miles, and they knew that they can trust him. They loved, his car. He kept a great, a car, and he was one of the ones that you can count on when they had bags of groceries to take home, and he loved his family.
He also had a 12-year-old son, 2 adult daughters. I mean, for a 12-year-old son who now faces life without their dad, I mean, it's just unthinkable.
It's horrible. It's just unimaginable that something like this can happen, that someone can come here from, 3 hours, 4 hours away and come back and snatch those that we love, and it hurts. And this community is broken, for all the victims who lost their lives. And, to say that we want to make sure that we stand with this family. We want to stand with his son, with the ones that he loved, and let them know that your father, I look at your father, even in doing that, he was a hero. You know what I mean? He was one of the ones that would stand in the way of whomever, trying to get in anyone's way. He was a protector, he was a provider, not only for his family, but for the community. And he would be sorely missed, in the community and at our church, where he diligently loved, working for the pastor and first lady, and made sure that they was taken care of at our church home, State Tabernacle.
Well, I know
also
you've been serving food to people in the community today and helping people out. Lenny Lane, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us, and our condolences, and I wish you the best. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Cooper.
More now on what we've been learning about the man who took the life of Hayward Patterson and 9 others. CNN's Brian Todd has the latest.
This was a straight-up hate crime, pure evil.
Tonight, police revealing details about the meticulous planning that went into the massacre of 10 people at a Buffalo store and how it could have been worse.
He had plans, had he gotten out of here, to continue his rampage and continue shooting people. He'd even spoken about possibly going to another store.
The 18-year-old accused of murdering several people in the parking lot. He exchanged gunfire with a security guard and shot more people in the store before surrendering to police.
He was very heavily armed. He had tactical gear. He had a tactical helmet on. He had a camera that he was live streaming what he was doing.
CNN obtained a 180-page statement attributed to the suspect, which was posted online just before the attack. The document's author says he was inspired after seeing a clip of another racially motivated attack in New Zealand in 2019, where a gunman live-streamed his murder of 51 people at 2 mosques. The document details how the shooter has been radicalized by online message boards, describing the Great Replacement theory, which suggests the false belief that the white race is dying out.
He had the N-word, which unfortunately was carved into one of his weapons. Clearly he was bent on hate.
CNN has obtained a photo of 2 other rifles the gunman brought to the scene that have writing on them, including the phrase, "White Lives Matter." The shooter allegedly wrote he'd chosen the Buffalo store based on the racial makeup of its zip code, and he had been serious about carrying out the attack since January.
The individual was here a few months ago, back in early March.
He'd been buying ammo, surplus military gear, and shooting irregularly, and had mapped out the store, intending to shoot all black people. The main gun, a Bushmaster XM15, was bought from this gun store before he illegally modified it. But according to the New York Times, he had no problem purchasing the weapon even after an incident at the Susquehanna Valley High School last June, when he was a student there. On the honor roll, school documents show.
The gun dealer was able to sell these weapons to this individual because there were no red flags that came up.
A spokesperson for the school district tells CNN the suspect was interviewed by police after he made an ominous reference to murder-suicide in a school project, although there was no specific threat.
He stated a facility. I'm not sure if it was a hospital or a mental health facility for a day and a half.
The gunman's neighbors we spoke to didn't want to give their names. They are frustrated.
Something got missed. You know, if he was flagged in high school, why didn't he get the mental health care he needed then? And the system failed him that caused this tragedy to occur.
They say the shooter was quiet and seemed like a normal teenager.
Then when I found out he was from Broome County, I says, I sure as hell hope he isn't from Conklin. So, and then it turns out he was. And then it turns out he's loose on my street. So we were all totally shocked about this whole thing.
The suspect is currently in custody and on suicide watch.
He's in a segregated unit aside from the rest of the general population, and that's for his safety.
And Brian joins me now from the alleged gunman's neighborhood in Conklin, New York. So I understand there's some new information about the firearms this person had.
That's right, Anderson. The online diatribe that this gunman posted online has some detail. We're also getting detail from authorities. The authorities say that he was able to purchase at least one of the firearms legally, and that's the AR-15 that he actually used to kill people inside that store. But according to his own document, he also had a rifle and a shotgun in his car. The shotgun, he claims, he bought at a store in Pennsylvania. The rifle was given to him by his father for Christmas in 2020, and according to his own document, he planned to shoot other black people on the street with those 2 weapons in his car as he drove away from the supermarket after that attack. And all of this, Anderson, he was able to procure these weapons despite what we mentioned in the piece, this mental health episode that he had in June of 2021, where he made an ominous reference to committing murder-suicide as part of a school project, and then he was given a mental health evaluation, was let go after about a day and a half. Despite all of that, he was able to get these very, very deadly weapons.
I mean, it's also sickening, but, you know, that he was encouraged by the shooter in Christchurch in New Zealand several years ago who live streamed his massacre, and that he wanted to essentially follow in that person's footsteps and chose to live stream this as well. I mean, he wanted to be famous in the community of sick individuals and racists who would praise what he had done.
That's right, Anderson, and that makes it even more disturbing. And, you know, as some of the video that he live streamed, we've been going through some of that. And he stopped at a certain point and pointed his gun at one person in the video that we've gone through, and the person screams no, and he says sorry, then he moves on. So, you know, again, just the disturbing nature of all of this, the planning of it, the people he wanted to target, and maybe someone he came across that he didn't want to target. We're getting some of those details as we go, and it's all just horrifying.
Brian Todd, appreciate it. Thank you. Next, the third-ranking Republican in the House answering allegations that, in the words of a fellow Republican, she is tolerating or even pushing the so-called white replacement theory that inspired the alleged murder in Buffalo. Later, new details about the mass shooting at a California church this weekend that we're now learning could have been far worse. We'll be right back.
What are the leading companies going to be talking about in the next 2 to 3 years from a talent perspective? It will be about skills. It will be about the use of AI to help their people develop their skills and to transform organizations. We know that skills are becoming obsolete very fast because of the change in digital and the use of technology. And it also enables you to open up the talent pipeline. So for example, in the US, we will hire 20% of our entry-level hiring this year will be into our apprenticeship program. Our apprenticeship program does not focus on 4-year degrees. It focuses on skills and potential. We also have a database of all of the skills of our client-facing people, and we can use algorithms to identify who can be upskilled into new hot areas.
Coronavirus. To get daily news updates in your inbox, sign up for the CNN newsletter. Coronavirus. Fact versus fiction.
Our mission here at CNN and journalists, the news comes first. That's when your heart beats a little bit faster. More breaking news that we are following right now. You really work as hard as you can, getting the facts. We're learning more about our lead clot. It is critically important. To our viewers in the United States and around the world, welcome to the Situation Room. We have breaking news.
The globetrotting and adventures, and we're longing to get out and go.
This is living.
Uncovering a city's DNA, meeting people who will share its secrets.
I love being here.
And making discoveries that wow.
You've got to be joking. Nice here, isn't it?
It's a world of wonder. Now, go and see it. Saturday on CNN, in association with Turkish Airlines.
We're talking tonight not just about another racist mass shooting, but also the driving notion behind this and several others, and more controversially, the question of whether that notion, white replacement theory as it's called, is being tolerated or even perpetuated by some on the political right. There's breaking news right now on one such figure, New York Congresswoman and third-ranking House Republican Elise Stefanik. She's being accused of using replacement theory language in campaign ads, something she denies. Liz Cheney, the Republican Congresswoman whose leadership job she took, tweeted today, "The House GOP leadership has enabled white nationalism, white supremacy, and anti-Semitism. History has taught us that what begins with words ends in far worse. GOP leaders, Cheney says, must renounce and reject these views and those who hold them. Republican Congressman Adam Kinzinger was more specific. Here is my replacement theory, he tweets. We need to replace Elise Stefanik, GOP leader, at Rep. MTG, at Cawthorn for NC, and a number of others. The replacement theory they are pushing, tolerating, is getting people killed. Just a short time ago, CNN's Manu Raju caught up with Congresswoman Stefanik. He joins us now. What did the Congresswoman have to say?
Well, she rejected the criticism and she defended her comments. And remember, this was all spawned in the aftermath of what we saw this week, focus on ads that she put out through her campaign committee back in 2021 on a Facebook page. She said in her Facebook ads, radical Democrats are planning their most aggressive move yet, a permanent election insurrection. Their plan to grant amnesty to 11 million illegal immigrants will overthrow our current electorate and create a permanent liberal majority in Washington. Now, that has gotten a lot of criticism, including from the #2 Senate Democrat today, Dick Durbin, who went to the Senate floor and said that she was echoing the likes of Tucker Carlson's, quote, dark gospel of fear and hate and racism. And when I asked Stefanik about that, she pushed back. Dick Durbin today criticized your Facebook ads, said that they were part of the dark gospel of fear and hate and racism. Can you respond to that?
I condemn racism. The difference of opinion on immigration is I support a secure border, while Democrats have a wide open border. I don't support allowing illegals to vote.
And you disavow this replacement theory?
I've never made a racist comment, and I am known nationally as expanding the Republican Party by supporting black candidates and Hispanic candidates.
Thank you, appreciate it. So yeah, that last exchange asking her if she disavowed the replacement theory. She said that she supports a broad tent Republican Party, including with black members, Hispanic members. But she has gotten some criticism internally to Anderson, including from Congressman Don Bacon, who told me today that those comments essentially put the party on, quote, thin ice. And he went on to say that anytime you suggest a whole group of people have a certain certain ideology, he said, I don't think it's a good place to be. But Anderson, some other members of the conference did defend Elise Stefanik, including one, Jeff Van Drew, who's a Republican from Jersey, told me that he had no issue with what she said.
Yeah, Manu Raju, appreciate it. Thanks. More now on the so-called replacement theory, its roots, which go back generations, and the new tendrils that seem to be spreading right now. Joining us is Kathleen Belew, assistant professor of American history at the University of Chicago and author of Bring the War Home, the White Power Movement in Paramilitary America. So, Kathleen, the fact that the shooter was focused on white replacement theory, which is, a fringe conspiracy, which has been a theme for Tucker Carlson and other prominent conservatives on television, on radio. How much responsibility do you put on public figures who traffic in these kind of ideas?
The problem with replacement theory, Anderson, is that it doesn't, it becomes less important whether these mainstream politicians and pundits mean to be calling out the violent white power movement and the other activists on the militant right that will take this theory to its most violent conclusions. The problem is that whether or not that is their intention, that is what has happened. So we are now in a moment of urgent need for condemnation of this from all corners of our mainstream civil society. This is a horrible act that belongs in a string of other horrible acts. We have to think about El Paso and Christchurch and Charleston and the Tree of Life Synagogue. All of these actions were carried out by the same organized white power movement. They are all ideological. All of them are mobilizing replacement theory in one way or another. And the fact that there isn't a clear disavowal of these ideas is alarming, to say the least.
You talk about them mobilizing replacement theory. How do you mean?
So replacement theory is a new sort of vogue phrase for, and by new I mean since the 2010s, for a set of ideas that has been in currency in the white power movement since the 1980s and has been in and out of favor throughout our recent history as a nation. The idea is much more focused on the thing that these activists would like to protect, which for extremists is the white birth rate and the reproductive capacity of white people in order to avoid racial extinction. And for people who are not on the fringe might appear something more like the violent defense of the idea that America is inherently a white nation, politically or culturally or otherwise, and sort of the defense of that against what they might think of as demographic threats like immigration. But the threat becomes less important than the act of protection, especially when we get into the violent fringe, because this is the thing that escalates this idea set into a set of sort of apocalyptic emergencies. So we see immigration rendered as a threat to these activists because they think it will overwhelm the white race with racial others. We see abortion rendered as a threat to these activists because they think that reproductive freedom and women's rights will mean more white women out of the home and not having enough babies to maintain the birth rate. We see African American communities, even distant ones in the case of Buffalo, as a threat because they simply present a threat of interracial marriage and a threat to the white majority and the white nation. So all of this together is a profoundly violent ideology. There should be no space for it anywhere in our mainstream discourse.
It also seems like this one attack feeds on another attack. I mean, this, excuse me, the shooter, had a 180-page incoherent rant, racist rant, that clearly motivated by, as you mentioned, the Christchurch shooter in New Zealand who live streamed. One motivates the other.
Yeah, and in this case, it's not even just about motivates the other. I ran part of it through a plagiarism detection software. I'm a college professor, so I have one of these at my disposal. And large chunks of the Buffalo document, or the document attributed to the purported shooter in Buffalo, is lifted directly from the document attributed to the mass shooter in Christchurch. Really? There's also, yeah, absolutely.
So you ran it through a plagiarism software program, and this guy basically lifted things from the Christchurch shooter.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, the next question to my mind is, what is the purpose of a document like that? And in his Discord, which I have not personally reviewed, but other experts have been looking through, there's talk about whether the document is a red herring meant to direct us away from his true intentions. But he does say that he believes in the racist sort of framing of that document. And the other part of that document that is very important is the long section on tactics and target selection, gun selection, protective gear, assessing of the route, how the attack should be carried out. The hyper attention on details like that, which we also saw in Christchurch and in El Paso, shows that that document is meant to radicalize future violent actors and prepare them to carry out similar attacks.
Yeah, Kathleen Belew, it's really, I appreciate your expertise on this. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Up next, we'll have more on the Buffalo attack. New details on the security guard at the supermarket who died trying to protect those in the store and likely saved others from losing their lives.
He's interviewed 5 U.S. presidents, authored 7 books, and has an independent voice that resonates.
What happened to when we were united against a common enemy?
He's raw, unique, and one of America's most important talk show hosts. Watch Smerconish, Saturday on CNN.
You can help the refugees from Ukraine. Join the over 80,000 who've already raised millions for food, shelter, and more. Explore CNN.com/impact. Click to take action.
More mortar strikes very, very close. They want us to start moving.
There's a sense the Russians haven't yet brought their full destructive power to bear.
Vladimir and his men have been alert since 4 a.m., fearing a Russian attack.
They were living here in frigid temperatures.
Sounds to me like many of these war crimes will go unpunished.
In Helsinki,
Kyiv,
Kramatorsk.
This is CNN.
Transformation, technology, new Marketplace Europe.
Grand designs and grand price tags to match. We're exploring the luxurious world of watches.
Marketplace Europe, Sunday on CNN.
For World Sport, I'm Alex Thomas, and this is CNN.
Business is all about making connections. But some connections are easier to make than others. With a CNN partner hotel, the world is always at your fingertips. CNN partner hotels, connected to your world.
I'm Paula Newton in Ottawa, and this is CNN.
We continue to bring you the latest in the mass shooting in Buffalo that left 10 people dead, including the supermarket security guard, Aaron Salter. As we mentioned earlier, the former Buffalo police lieutenant was killed by the gunman after bravely stepping up and engaging the shooter. CNN's Jason Carroll has more on his story.
He died while trying to save others. That's how those who knew Aaron Salter say he should be remembered.
He was a strong individual. He was a warm individual, a real caring person, cared about the community, someone who devoted a lot of his life to public safety, to keeping the community safe.
Buffalo's Mayor Byron Brown knew Salter for years, back when Salter was a Buffalo police officer.
I remember first meeting him through his parents, Aaron and Carol Salter, very warm people. They had a business in the community, and I saw him as a loving son, always trying to take care of his parents, make sure his parents were okay. That's the kind of person that he was. He had a caring spirit and a desire to take care of other people.
That desire helped Salter rise through the ranks in the police department. He eventually became a lieutenant. His love of community and law enforcement was one of the reasons he went to work as a security guard at the Tops supermarket after he retired from the force. Saturday, armed only with a handgun, he engaged the shooter.
He was shot at multiple times by Officer Salter, a retired police officer, shot at him multiple times and was on target with at least one of those rounds. He had heavy plated armor on. He had a tactical helmet on.
Law enforcement officials say it is clear he saved many lives.
My daughter was crouched down in the front end for the entire shooting.
His actions gave Fragrance Harris Stanfield, who works at the market with her daughter, the time they needed to take cover.
Everyone started running at that point. I grabbed my daughter, kept running until I got all the way to the back door.
Those who knew Salter say even though he retired from the force, he never stopped being a police officer.
I think he would want to be remembered as someone who cared about his community, who cared about his family, and someone that did his job and stood up when other people were in danger trying to keep others safe.
Salter was 55 years old. Even though he was not a police officer at the time of his death, there is a movement in Buffalo due to his actions to have him buried with a full formal funeral as if he was an active duty police officer. The mayor says he supports that. He's simply waiting to hear from the family to see what is best. Anderson.
Jason Carroll, appreciate it. Thank you. Joining me now is John Flynn, the district attorney of Erie County, where Buffalo is located. Mr. Flynn, appreciate you being with us. This is still obviously an active investigation. Can you tell us, though, where things stand tonight, the kind of evidence your office is looking at?
Sure. We're looking at all the evidence that we've gathered so far, and we're looking at all the evidence that potentially is out there as well. As far as where things stand right now, we have a felony hearing that is scheduled for Thursday. Well, we had the arraignment on Saturday, and he is now going to be facing the murder in a first-degree charge at that felony hearing on Thursday at 9:30.
How important is this 180-page racist rant that the shooter allegedly wrote? We just talked to a professor in our previous segment who ran it through a plagiarism software program and found a lot of it, or chunks of it, were taken directly from the Christchurch shooter in New Zealand's racist rant.
It's a very important piece of evidence, Anderson, in the sense that it does two things. It provides us with information on his intent. One of the elements of the murder charge is the intent to kill multiple people. So the intent element that I have to prove now in my murder charge, that manifesto is a potential source for that intent analysis. Secondly, it's important for looking at other crimes that he may have committed. So the way this is going to work is that I use that murder in a first-degree charge kind of as my mechanism to get in the grand jury. And that'll be the next step after Thursday, will be the grand jury investigation. So I use that murder in a first-degree charge to open the door for the grand jury, for lack of a better phrase. And then when I get in the grand jury, I can then add on more charges, potentially. Again, I got to have the evidence, obviously, but that manifesto and other pieces of evidence that we've gathered is important in the analysis that I'm going to go through to potentially add on more charges.
The Buffalo Police Commissioner said that the shooter had an additional target beyond the grocery store. Was that the plan to shoot from the vehicle as he drove away, or was that something else?
We're trying to determine that right now. We have that piece of evidence. I can confirm that, but I can't specifically articulate to you right now what my analysis is of that. That'd be unfair to my proceedings. Sure. But we are looking at that. And we are now using that to determine what may have been his next step. Now, again, I obviously can't prosecute him on, a crime that never occurred. Assuming that the next step was a crime, but I can use that potentially in my intent analysis for the crime that I'm alleging that he did do.
The live stream of this. That I assume is evidence as well. I mean, obviously. That's
a very powerful piece of evidence. Obviously, I mean, I've done hundreds of murder investigations and hundreds of homicide prosecutions. As a DA, and anytime you have video, obviously it's extremely helpful. So again, I don't want to comment specifically on how it's helpful and what it shows.
Sure.
But I can kind of generally tell you that overall, that's very helpful.
John Flynn, I appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.
Thanks, Anderson.
There's breaking news tied to another shooting this weekend, one at a church in California. What investigators are saying about the motivations of that suspected gunman next.
Today, we live in an unpredictable environment, and news races around the world at breakneck speed.
Our engine continues, our impetus, our momentum.
My show brings you the latest news and top news makers. Give me the facts on voter fraud.
There has never been a moment where voter fraud has affected the outcome of an election.
And we also dive below the headlines to explore vital issues impacting our lives.
Normally this theatre would be filled with people and art and debate and energy. And so now we have to rely on the two of us.
How interesting is it to be Tyler Mitchell today? It's crucial we make sense of what's happening. There seems to be some confusion that maybe you can clear up. Where are the U.S. forces in Syria going? And fully understand what's at stake.
What's happening now in the world is a great thing because people are talking about subjects they never did before.
Amanpour, tonight on CNN. Connect the world with Becky Anderson.
It all starts here. Changing, fighting, creating, connecting. That's why we're here. We live here, we work here, we're from here, and we'll go wherever the story takes us.
I'm Becky Anderson in Tehran.
We are in Jerusalem. Real news that shapes our world. Exploring not just what's going on, but why.
I just want to press you on one further point.
Getting perspective on this region from this region. Places that many of us know, but few of us get to see. Observing countries on the move, still rooted in tradition. It all starts here, and that's why we're here, bringing you the world from our Middle Eastern hub.
Connect the world with Becky Anderson, today on CNN.
To open doors, to develop contacts, and to unlock secrets, it takes trust.
It was the first time he really came out of his shell in front of a camera.
Trust that you'll listen.
It's so great that you're here today. It just highlights what's making a difference.
That you'll be honest. I don't want to pry, but what sort of conversations do you have with them? Trust that you'll be accurate and you'll be fair. It was an unprecedented move, very eerie. All the roads have been closed off. Describe the theme that you arrived to. The Apache attack helicopter. This is what Captain Wales has been flying. Do you want talks with them?
What is the point of talking now?
Huge amounts of police support coming into this protest. We continue to monitor the government in crisis. This was the Duchess's first news interview. Rare access indeed. That's what it's all about. Max Foster, CNN.
We try to be global and we try to be smart. And we try very hard to get both of those every week. But I want to hear our authentic voices of people who are passionate or intelligent about a subject, who will make you smarter, move you emotionally, who will kind of challenge your mind or move your heart. And that's the consistency that we try to get at.
Fareed Zakaria GPS, Sundays on CNN.
I'm Vedika Sood in New Delhi, and this is CNN.
Breaking news now on the investigation into another shooting that happened over the weekend, this one at a church in Orange County, California on Sunday. Investigators say the shooting that left at least one person dead and 5 others wounded was likely politically motivated. There are new details tonight on how the suspected gunman carried out the attack. According to the Orange County Sheriff, the suspect placed Molotov cocktail-like incendiary devices around the church. Authorities say he also chained some of the doors closed and disabled some locks with super glue. CNN's Stephanie Elam has more details.
I think we all feel a little less safe today.
The shooting started after Sunday church services had ended for the Irvine Taiwanese Presbyterian Church in Laguna Woods, California. The suspect is a 68-year-old man who immigrated from China to the U.S. many years ago and was living in Las Vegas, according to the Orange County Sheriff. The FBI opening a federal hate crimes investigation after officials discovered anti-Taiwanese writings in his possession.
We can tell you that within the vehicle he left not a manifesto but some notes that supported what I shared with you earlier, and that would be his really hatred of the Taiwanese people.
While it was unclear if he was at the earlier service, law enforcement says parishioners saw the suspect during the luncheon before he began shooting at the roughly 50 people gathered there. But officials say the gunman tried to prevent anyone from getting away.
The suspect was able to secure the doors within the church with chains and tried to disable locks within the church with super glue.
The sheriff said more ammunition along with explosive devices were found at the scene.
We located several bags within the facility. They contained magazines with additional ammo, 4 Molotov cocktail-like incendiary devices that he had placed around the inside of the church.
A local city council member with ties to the church spoke to one man who was in the church during the shooting.
I heard from one of the congregants who told me that, everyone was taking pictures with the pastor. It was a luncheon to welcome him back. And after the gunman started shooting, he was reloading his gun, and that was an opportunity for the pastor to strike him with a chair, and everybody else tackled him.
In all, 6 people were shot. 1 man was killed. 52-year-old physician John Chang.
Dr. Chang is a hero in this incident. Dr. Chang charged the suspect, attempted to disarm him, which allowed other parishioners to then intercede, taking the suspect into custody.
The sheriff says the bloodshed could have been far worse.
Without the actions of Dr. Chang, it is no doubt that there would be numerous additional victims in this crime.
But instead, those potential victims, mostly elderly Taiwanese worshipers, fought back.
We believe a group of churchgoers detained him and hogtied his legs with an extension cord and confiscated at least 2 weapons from him.
They acted spontaneously, heroically, and if not for their quick action, the way that this individual set up that environment to kill many more people, there would have been many, many more lives lost.
And Stephanie Elam joins me now. What more do we know about the charges that the shooter is facing?
Right now, Anderson, we know that he's facing 1 felony count of murder and 5 felony counts of attempted murder. And we know at this point it is possible that he could face the death penalty, but they're still weighing out the charges at this point, Anderson.
All right, Stephanie Elam, thanks so much. Tomorrow's another big day for voting. Some of the most hotly contested races of the election cycle are about to be decided. A lot happening in the final hours of some of those key contests. Chris Wallace is here to break it all down for us. We'll talk with Chris in just a moment.
This is CNN. More people get their news from CNN than any other news source.
We share this place, we all belong.
Years ago, and we decided that we wanted to have a Freshman Academy community service project, and we decided part of that was going to be working with spreading awareness of modern day slavery.
At the end of your presentation, you need to tell me how that issue connects to your poem.
There's probably 300, 400 kids in the Freshman Academy. We had all of their core teachers make sure on My Freedom Day that they were teaching about that topic. And now we've got not just our core classes doing it, but also our elective classes.
Okay guys, so this is what we're going to do today as far as packing. You are going to grab a Ziploc bag, and then you are going to start here.
So when we first started this was exclusively for the freshman class, but it was such a hit with all of the classes that every year we've grown and added the classes in, so now it's a school-wide event.
And who are you helping?
So we have two groups, and both of those organizations work towards ending human trafficking or helping those that are in need. It's been amazing because our students have really embraced the idea of learning about modern slavery and embraced the idea of what is human trafficking, how it has impacted them, and it's been a very popular topic to learn about and to participate in.
Five states are holding primary elections tomorrow: Idaho, Kentucky, Oregon, and a lot's at stake, particularly in the battlegrounds of Pennsylvania and North Carolina. Nomination contests there could play a big role in determining which party controls the Senate next year. There's been a lot of last-hour twists in Pennsylvania. The leading candidate in that state's Democratic primary, John Fetterman, just suffered a stroke days before the vote. And on the GOP side, there's been a late surge by far-right candidate Kathy Barnett, who's helped push the former president's big lie and who also has a history of anti-Muslim and anti-gay statements. CNN's Chris Wallace joins us with more. Chris, it is great to have you on the program. What do you think is the most, or what race are you watching the most?
Oh, I think the Pennsylvania Senate race tomorrow. In fact, it's been generally regarded, the Pennsylvania Senate race, as the Democrats' best chance to flip a Republican seat to their side, to the Democratic side. Pat Toomey, the incumbent Republican, is retiring. It's an open seat in a state that Joe Biden won in 2020. And there really are fascinating primary contests on both the Republican and Democratic side.
I mean, Fetterman, the stroke, you know, we're told it's a mild stroke. He's still in the hospital. How is that going to affect it on the Democratic side, do you think?
Well, it certainly doesn't help. He's not going to be able, he wasn't able to campaign today. He's not going to be able to campaign tomorrow. On the other hand, according to the polls, he was well in front of Connor Lamb, a congressman from the western part of the state. And you know, to the degree that you can believe political experts, Fetterman is going to win despite the fact that he has had this obvious health setback. He's an interesting candidate, 6'8", shaved head, walks around even in the middle of winter in basketball shorts, pretty liberal, supported Bernie Sanders in 2016. You know, if you were going to believe the political consultants, they'd have a better chance of flipping the seat with Connor Lamb, who's more moderate. But fortunately, consultants don't choose candidates. The voters do, and they seem to be really in favor of Lieutenant Governor John Fetterman moving up to be their Senate nominee for the in November.
And on the Republican side, I mean, that race is fascinating. A lot of money thrown by Mehmet Oz. And now, and he got the endorsement, obviously, of President Trump. But now you have this other candidate, Barnett, who has not spent a lot of money as the other two, and is doing very well.
Well, that's right. I mean, everybody thought this was going to be a battle between two multimillionaires. Dr. Mehmet Oz, as you say, he has the Trump endorsement. He has all the TV celebrity. David McCormick, a hedge fund billionaire. And they've been battling back and forth and spent hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in TV ads. And suddenly, in the last week or so, out of nowhere, Kathy Barnett, never held office, doesn't have any money, but she, in a debate, made a very powerful statement. It turns out that she was the byproduct, as she puts it, of a rape. Her mother was 11 years old. Of course, people talk about abortion and exceptions for rape and incest. She says she's the product of the rape of her mother when she was 11, and that has apparently struck a chord with Pennsylvania conservatives, and she's now within striking distance of the two billionaires.
It's interesting, though, the former president, President Trump, has come out saying that she is too extreme to win in a general.
He has said that, and apparently he was making some calls today, robocalls, trying to stop the Barnett boomlet. On the other hand, he also said if she ends up as the nominee, he's going to support her. So it's going to be very interesting to see. Again, I think the consultants would say that in terms of trying to hold this Republican seat, which is important if the Republicans are going to take back the Senate, that Oz and McCormick would have a much better chance. But it's up to the voters. They may go for Barnett.
In North Carolina, you also have GOP Congressman Madison Cawthorn, who is competing. He's obviously had, I don't know, a lot of issues, I guess we could say, lately, personal and political. The former president said today that Cawthorn deserves a second chance. I guess he kind of stopped short of actually endorsing him. How do you see that race?
Well, it's Cawthorn's to lose, and he may just lose it. I mean, you've got the Republican senator, his own party in North Carolina, Tom Tillis, actively campaigning against Cawthorn, saying that he's an embarrassment, that he's a disaster. He's had all kinds of things from getting in airports and being stopped by TSA with a loaded gun to claiming that he saw orgies with cocaine and sex among House colleagues. It's his to lose.